Okay. What we're gonna do today, I think we're gonna try to do something difficult. We're gonna try to look at the two stories in Parashat Toldot in which Yaakov deals with Esav. They have their interactions, right? One when in the beginning with Yaakov giving Esav the food and saying, "I'm going to give you the food, but you give me a birthright." The second one being when I don't really know if they have an interaction, but more of the when Yaakov is taking the blessing before Esav could get the blessing from Yitzhak, right? They don't actually interact. And we're going to try to do the following. We're going to try to suspend our understanding of, our emotional or moral take on the story. And we're going to try to detect what is the text of the Torah telling us about the story. And what I mean by that is as follows. The Torah often will give us a moral statement on how it's judging one of the two characters in the story. So I'll give you the greatest example. The story of David and Bathsheba. Okay? Right, when David sleeps with Bathsheba, she's married to somebody else, that whole story. And the rabbis go at length and try to explain the actions of David. But the David is very clear. Vayera be'enei Hashem. What David did was bad in the eyes of God. Okay, bad in the eyes of God. The Torah, the David is giving us a way to think about the story. I want you to know this was bad, this was good. Right? The Torah often will go, how do we know we like a character? Because it will say, something like that. He found favor in God's eyes. It was a righteous person. The Torah will give us normally a description within the story of who the Torah thinks is the right and the wrong. Why is that important? Because we're coming with pieces of a story. We don't know fully exactly what happened in the story. We're trying to judge what lesson am I supposed to take from the story. If I constructed the story kind of without the Torah's guidance, I might reach the opposite message because it's not always clear. The full details, I don't have the full picture. And we'll talk about specifically in these stories what picture we're missing. And then the Torah will give us a nudge one way or the other how the Torah wants us to think about the story. And we have to ask ourselves, what does that mean? What's the relevance for us to understand what the Torah is telling us? Okay? So the first story, we're going to start on page 49. Pasuk 27 to 34. So it's a short story. It's 7 Pasukim long, right? Chapter 25, Perikaf, Pasuk 27, and we'll read it in the English, okay? So keep in mind, all we know so far, Yitzhak marries Rivka. They have two children, Yaakov and Esav. That's all we know, right? Yitzhak was 60 years old when he gave birth to them. Says the Torah as follows. When the boys grew up, Esav became a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors. But Jacob was a mild man. Unclear if that's the best interpretation possible, but let's take it for now. Who stayed in camp, alternatively, instead of camp, in tents. But obviously, if he's talking about one guy going hunting in the field, so he's in the camp, in the tents, okay. Is that supposed to mean anything to me? Maybe yes, maybe no. We could talk about it maybe another time. But okay, we definitely know they're at odds with each other. Fulfillment of the prophecy that Rivka got from Hashem, that these two people are going to be on two different programs. Well, Isaac favored Esav because he had a taste for gain. But Rebekah favored Jacob. Okay, so the father likes Esav, the mother likes Yaakov. The father likes Esav because he gave him food, he gave him the hunting. That's what it seems to be. That's what the Torah seems to be saying. Rivka loves Yaakov. It doesn't tell us why. Unqualified, which is interesting. Why does the Torah feel the need to go and qualify Esav's love, Yitzhak's love for Esav, but does not qualify Rivka's love for Yaakov? Okay, fine. I don't know. Does it mean the other parent didn't love the other one? What does that mean? No.
Why does it even have to tell us that?
Good question. I think obviously when we get to chapter 27, we'll understand definitely why we need to know this, but probably not for the story we're about to see. So our story begins like this in verse 29. That's like the background information, seemingly important, but difficult to really know what to do with, right? A little bit ambiguous, a little bit vague. I don't really know what to do with this. Is hunting bad? Is sitting in the tent bad? Is the mother loving Yaakov, the father loving Esav? Which one is right? Which one is wrong? I don't know what to do with this. Too ambiguous. So I shall continue the story. Once, when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esav came in from the open. Okay. He coming in from hunting, he's hungry, right? So the other guy's sitting in the camp. So what does he do? He makes food. The other guy's hunting. He's coming from outside. Okay. So seemingly this is what I need to know. This makes sense. And Esav said to Jacob in verse 30, give me some of that red stuff. Literally, ha'adom hazeh, red stuff is a great interpretation. To gulp down, also good interpretation. Let me gulp it down. For I am famished, which is why he was named Edom. Edom from the word Adom, meaning red. Give me the red stuff. Okay, so therefore he's called Edom. Give me the red stuff. Meaning, if I pause right here and think about it for a second, is this something normal which Esav is doing? What? No, you can't say it's normal. How do I know I can't say it's normal? They called him red because of this. They called him Edom because of this.
He did it so often, they called him red.
No, it seems to be once, right? It seems to be a once. It doesn't seem to be a frequent thing. But meaning the fact that they're calling him red is almost like a nickname. It's because it was so absurd the way he said it, right? I mean, if it's perfectly normal, you don't make a nickname from the person when you did something normal. It seems to be, right? The Torah, by calling him, and they called him Edom because of this, is trying to highlight the absurdity of Esav. I mean, otherwise, if it wasn't something that stood out, if it wasn't something that was absurd, you would think that there shouldn't be any reason to talk about it. The fact that they're mentioning it seems to be that there's something off of this situation, and therefore he's called Edom. That's.
I still think that it's something that he probably did often. I mean, when I call somebody something, it's because I know this guy always does that. That's why.
Okay, I understood. There could be two reasons why we would have a nickname, right? Sandy is pointing out. It could be it's frequent, or because there was something so absurd. It could be one of the two. But here the story is clearly not repeating on a daily basis, right? Meaning this is give me from the red stuff. Let me gulp it down the red stuff, right? I love that translation. Red stuff. Well, he's not doing that on a daily basis. He has a name for it. I don't know. He eats it every day. Alternatively, Yaakov and Esav are not conducting a business transaction about the firstborn rights every single day. So it seems to be more of this absurd. Okay, well, we don't need to build the whole world on it. I'm okay if you're not convinced.
Two brothers, let's say, I have two sons. One is out.
Okay, no. So that's what I'm pointing out. If it really was a normal request, I don't think his name becomes Edom because of it. Meaning it's not so much. And look what the Torah is telling. It's not so much that he asked for food. The way he responded, the way he defined the food. Give me the red stuff is a little bit weird, right? Normally we don't talk that way. We associate the saying, give me the red stuff. Normally we'll associate giving me the red stuff with a coarse type of person, not a refined type of person, especially let me gulp it down, right? So it seems to be that either way, Esav is being presented here as a little bit of a crude sense, and that's why they're calling him red, because he's a crude person, and like he's so crude, he'll call food the red stuff. It's a stew. It's a normal stew. Not red stuff. I mean, that's what it sounds like, right?
But just like you pointed out, that it was probably just this one time. Maybe this one time he was just famished.
Right. How's this up? What do we want from Esav? Hold that thought in mind, right? And then it gets right, seemingly also in verse 31. We'll see. It's in there. And the answer when we get to verse 34, I think we'll have the answer. Okay, the guy was famished. The red stuff. It's not, Okay, look what happens, verse 31. Jacob said, first, sell me your birthright. You want food or hair? Pause. Sell me your birthright. What's that? You're not gonna, right, okay, good. Good. That's what I want. I don't want to define birthright. I don't know what it means. But, right, Shelley is saying intuitively, not right. The guy is famished. He's coming from the field. He wants some food. He's sitting there, you're holding him hostage. Right? I tell my son, he was terrorist. Was terrorist. Right? They're doing, right? Oh, United States of America. They won't negotiate with terrorists. You have hostage. We're not coming as equals. Not negotiating. We don't do that. Yaakov is holding Esav hostage. The guy's famished. He's going, give me a birthright first. So I'm like, yeah, pause. No food for you. What? There you go make your own food. Right. Okay. Okay. So now, notice it doesn't sound good, but we're looking for. Notice what I said at the beginning of the class. What are we going to look for? What does the Torah have to say about it? Okay. So let's continue reading. And Esav said, I'm at the point of death. So what is the use of birthright to me? Oh, I'm at the point of death. So it's a bad translation, to be honest with you. The Hebrew words is Hinei Anochi Holech Lamut. Holech Lamut never implies a sense of immediacy. Never. Hinei Anochi Holech Lamut never implies the person is deathly ill in the moment. It means I'm gonna go die. I'm on my way, right? From when we're born, we're on our way to dying, right? There's the sense of death is inevitable.
Till 120.
Well, 120, but 120, right? There's that Holech Lamud, right? Is never saying I'm dying. I'm not right. That's why I don't think it's a good translation. I'm at the point of death, but definitely it's an exaggeration. The guy is hungry from the field. He's not at the point of death. I mean, I don't know what you're doing when you're in the field, but anybody who's going and exercising and doing whatever they're doing is that kind of you don't say I'm at the point of death. So either Esav is exaggerating, like, right, or
I'm dying.
right, good. That's what I'm saying. Either he's exaggerating in that way, or alternatively, he's making a different point. It could be this means to say I'm starving, exaggeration, which again goes to his coarse nature. Oh, I'm dying, right? In that sense. Or alternatively, look what he says. So, of what use is my birthright to me? Hey. He doesn't say, I'm dying, give me food. He says, no, so of what use is the birthright to me? I'm going to die. What do I need the birthright for? What does that mean I'm going to die? What? I don't want to define it. But I don't want to define it because I don't know if the Torah defines it. Right? But yeah, we could assume double portion, or we could probably assume it's like the guy who's going to be the head of the family at the end of days, after the father passes on, who's going to be the leader of the family, and therefore he gets the double portion because he's the leader of the family. Yeah. So, but it seems to be an ancient custom from antiquity before the Torah that the firstborn was getting the double portion. But it's more than just getting a double portion. It seems to be you're the firstborn, and therefore the family runs according to you. Right? Keep in mind that families, the way they were constructed, they weren't family units in which everybody has their own separate house. They were a clan, right? You live together as a clan, and therefore who's the head of the clan? The firstborn is the head of the clan. First it's the father, then it's the firstborn, and he's in charge of the nieces, the nephews, and he makes all the kind of decisions. They're living together as a clan. Think Bedouin lifestyle. Don't think city like everybody has their own house. No, they're a little traveling clan. It's really the word, right? That's how you have to think about it. So it makes sense. The firstborn is probably some position of leadership. It's not just a financial thing. Meaning,
Honor also. Aren't you supposed to honor your older brothers?
Yeah, but I don't think that's correct. But when we say honor, it's not just like giving the person the chance. Meaning honor, they get to decide. They get to make the decisions. That's what I'm saying. I think it's far more than we associate with the firstborn today. Is my point I'm trying to make. I was just trying to give you that sense of right what's at stake here. It's not something small, which is why it's weird that Esav goes, okay, I'm going to die. What do I need my firstborn for? What do you mean you need your firstborn for? Just tell what? What's happening here, right? Very strange. Now, also, I'd like to keep in mind, and I don't really want to do this, but we'll have to do this. And I'm setting you up for something here. Is it really, do we think this is the only food in the house?
Terrible.
Maybe it's only hot food, but that's not a question I asked. Do we think that literally is no food in the house, that if he doesn't eat this, he's going to die? Very difficult to assume. That's probably the situation. I mean, there's no bread, maybe a day old, but there's no bread, there's nothing. They had zero food in the house besides this one pot of lentils that he happens to be making. Okay. But I'm saying that on purpose. I want to get something. Okay. So verse 33. But Jacob said, so meaning seemingly he said, okay, take it. I don't care, right? I'm gonna die. Take it. But Willie, page 49. So he says, Jacob said, swear to me first. No. Okay, listen, it's out there. He swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. But they have a formal transaction, so he's not dying in the time it takes him to make this formal oath and whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they swear on. Maybe they swore to God. I don't know. They made a legal, commitment, we'll call it, right? And then what happens is like this. So they sold his birthright. Now, this is my favorite pasuk. Jacob then gave Esav bread and lentil stew. Pause. There was bread. Okay. Interesting. He ate and drank.
And he didn't say Birkat Amazon.
Neither did talk later on, so don't go there. He ate and drank, and he rose and went away. Okay. He ate, he drank. Okay. What, he rose and he went away? What do you say? What is that? What do I need to know? He left. I don't know. Say, what do I care what he did afterwards? He rose. He went away. Weird. Thus did Esav spurn the birthright.
Spurn, is that the way it's translated? Spurn?
Yeah, perfect. Either denigrate, could be, right, ridicule, but spurn is a great word. It's better within the context, right? So, what does the Torah have to say about this transaction? Does Torah agree with Shelley that Yaakov is wrong? That he's not nice? What does the Torah do? Not only does the Torah not say anything negative about Yaakov, what does it do? How does it read the story?
But the two boys didn't get along.
Wait, no. But I'm asking you, what's the moral conclusion?
So he should not bully his brother and sold his
birthright. The Torah is saying who's the person in the wrong here? Esav. Right? Meaning, normally we read the story. If you take away these 4 words, we have a whole debate. Is Yaakov in the wrong? Nobody talks about Esav. Comes into that and says, thus did Esav spurn the birthright. This is the point I want you to take away from the story. Not did Yaakov hold him hostage. Not was he about to die. It seems to be all of these things are not really true. It seems to be that Esav literally does not care about the birthright. He's willing to sell his birthright for a bowl of lentils, not because he's going to die, but just because all he cares about is the here and now. Birthright later. Right now I'm famished. I want food. Give me the red stuff. I don't even know what it is. Give me. I don't care about anything else, right? And thus did Esav spurn the birthright. So this is such an important story to us. But it's important in 2 ways. A, it helps us understand greater the insight of the characters of Yaakov and Esav. If Esav is spurning the birthright, and obviously we can see Yaakov is valuing the birthright, there seems to be the Torah saying we like Yaakov, we don't like Esav. That's the general. But I think also it teaches us a lesson here that's going to set us up for a far more complicated story. What's the lesson it's teaching us? Don't insert your own thing into the picture because there's too much ambiguity when you're reading the story to understand, is he really dying? Is the other food? Or all these details that might be relevant for us to give an accurate assessment. Let the Torah do it for you. And the Torah's judgment might not have been how you were reading the story, but only because you might have been missing the details that are relevant in order to reach that conclusion. right? So this is just my introduction to the methodology to set us up for the next story. All right, so Shelly, you see what I did here? Don't jump and say, because the Torah is going to tell us. And let's see what the Torah, and then I have to interpret all the details based on the moral assessment of the Torah. So there was food. We could clearly see there was bread. He wasn't really dying right away. He was being over exaggerating and just focusing on immediate gratification and not concerning himself with real valuable ideas about the birthright and about leadership and the direction of the family and so on and so forth. The guy is not interested in this stuff. That's what the Torah is telling us to read the story. So I can't argue with the Torah, right? Meaning my point is like this. I can't take the Torah story, not know the full details, and argue with the assessment of the Torah that the Torah who knows the details is making about the story. I only know the story from the Torah. So it's absurd for me to take the story from the Torah and reach a conclusion different than the Torah. I think that would be patently absurd to do that. If you know the story from elsewhere and you want to make a different conclusion, fine. But when you only know the story from the Torah and you're missing all the details, Torah knows the details and it's giving you a conclusion, it's clear you have to read it with that conclusion in mind. Go back and now reread the story. That's the point. Okay. So now what are we going to do? This is the easy one. Now we're going to go to the hard one. So now we're going to go to chapter 27, which begins on page 42. Okay? 52. Yeah, good point. Okay. Chapter 27, which begins on page 52. And here is the famous story of Yaakov and Rivka conspiring to take the firstborn rights from, wrong words. Stuck with firstborn. To take the blessing, which we don't know if it's connected to the firstborn or not. The way the commentators differ on how to interpret. Let's assume for now, let's make it easy for ourselves. Let's assume it's a different thing. To take the blessing that Yitzhak wants to give to Esav, that they conspire, Yaakov and Rivka conspire to get the blessing to Yaakov. The way they do so is through trickery. The way they do so is Yitzhak is blind. They rely on his blindness to dress up Yaakov with the goat hair so he feels hairy. So Yitzhak touches it, he feels, okay, fine. And he realizes, this person is hairy, it could be Esav, and therefore he gives him the beracha. And only once Yaakov leaves does Esav come in, and it says, what about my beracha? I'm going to kill him because he took my beracha. And the question is, how does the Torah want us to read the story? Does the Torah want us to read the story as Yaakov doing something wrong? As Yaakov being the guilty one by stealing the beracha from Esav? What's the Torah's moral statement about this story? Now that we know, we could see the Torah will give us moral statements that we could see. So I just want to prime you for something here. So if Yaakov if the Torah considers it that Yaakov really stole illegally, unjustly the blessing, what would we expect the Torah to kind of say at the conclusion of the story? What would we expect? If the Torah really believes Yaakov is in the wrong, what would we expect the Torah to say?
They should get the blessing.
No, if Yaakov is in the wrong, what would you expect? Once the story is completed, then what would you expect that the little ending of the story to be? Well, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. You're jumping, but it's good. We're going to have to deal with that word. Okay? But no, I'm just asking, what should we expect? What if at the end of the last story it said, and thus did Esav spurn the firstborn rights, what would we expect the conclusion of this story to be?
Shouldn't really care.
And so did Yaakov steal the blessings from his brother Esav, and maybe throw in a God who was angry or something like that, right? So keep that in mind. The Torah has these abilities at its disposal. The word you're quoting is actually going to lead us into something fascinating, but we'll get there. So let's see. So what I'm going to do, unfortunately, the story is, not unfortunately, but the story is 46, 47 Pesukim that are going to be relevant to us. So we can't read all 47. So I'm going to have to pick and choose. If you feel that there's a pasuk that's relevant to our discussion that I'm skipping, point it out. Okay? I'm going to read you first the
His brother was kidding.
what?
Why did he go into blessing her and gave up?
No. So that's what I'm saying. Let's assume firstborn and blessing, two separate ideas.
Why did his child go into blessing someone and it?
No, that's what I'm saying. He spurned the firstborn rights.
Right.
This blessing is not that. Let's assume it's not.
Okay, it's just a blessing.
Yeah, let's assume. I'm not really sure if it's true, but for our purposes, for our story, let's assume somehow it's not that. It seems to be Esav thinks they're separate. Let me just read you the verse that Esav thinks it's separate. If you go to verse 36 on page 54, and this so maybe will help you, so you right? He said, so Esav said, was he then named Jacob that he might supplant me these two times? First, he took away my blessing. First, he took away my birthright, and now he has taken away my blessing. So it seems to be Esav thinks it's two separate things. Whether it is or isn't, I don't know. It depends how you define these things. Again, they're terms that if we lived during the time of the Torah, we would understand much better what's the difference between firstborn and a blessing. Because seemingly the blessing is your brothers are going to bow down to you. So I don't really know how much it's different than the firstborn. No, okay. So now, I'm going to read it very quickly. I'm going to read from 27 to 30, chapter 27, verse 1 to verse 13. I'm going to read it very quickly. When Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see, he called his older son Esav and said to him, my son. He answered, here I am. And he said that I am now old, and I do not know how soon I may die. Take your gear, your quiver and bow, and go out into the open and hunt me some game. Then prepare a dish for me such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my innermost blessing before I die. Right? So it's interesting, this association food with blessing and being in a spiritual state through food. Judaism is very big on this, but we're not going to do this now. Okay, but there's a lot to do. Rebekah had been listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esav. When Esav had gone out into the open to hunt some game to bring home, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I overheard your son speaking to your brother Esav, saying, bring me some game and prepare a dish for me to eat, so that I may bless you with the Lord's approval before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully as I instruct you. Imagine the mother said, listen, this is what we're doing. Go to the flock and fetch me 2 choice kids, and I will make of them a dish for your father as such as he likes, and take it to your father to eat in order so that he may bless you before he dies. Obviously, the assumption is not a separate beracha, but get there first, right? We know this because Jacob answered his mother Rebekah, but my brother Esav is a hairy man, and I am smooth-skinned. If my father touches me, I shall appear to him as a trickster and bring upon myself a curse, not a blessing. But his mother said to him, a curse, my son, be upon me. Just do as I say, and go fetch him for me. Meaning, I'm your mother, I know what I'm doing. So it's interesting. Yaakov here is presented as someone who is opposed, doesn't think it's a great idea. Says the mother, be quiet, and go do as I say. Now, also, I want to point out here, the Torah gave us 2 Pesukim. I think this is significant. 2 Pesukim that kind of create some form of drama. The first Pasuk, Esav is, Yitzhak is blind. The second Pasuk, Rivka happens to over here. Like there's these details falling into place. Why do I say that? Because now when you read the story, imagine you don't know the ending. What are you curious about to find out? So we have this chance encounter. Rivka doesn't know. She happened to overhear. Yitzhak is blind, so he can't see. There's going to be, maybe they could be able to trick him. Yaakov is saying maybe he'll find out. Rivka is preparing a way. We'll do this goat hair thing, and maybe we'll. What are we expecting to unfold? What's the tension the Torah is building up for us? No. I think there's something specific. It's one of 2 things that could happen here. That, meaning you're reading the story. I pause here. You don't know the continuation. What are you going to want to?
Yitzhak could die.
No, he's not going to die.
Well, he said, I'm
No,
dying.
no, but he's not going to die by the time the blessing comes. He says, I don't know when I'm going to die. He's not on his deathbed. No, I don't think Yitzhak is going to die before he gives the blessing to either of them. What's my question? What's the suspense?
What happens between the brothers?
No, you're asking a different question. You're assuming that Yaakov is going to manage to get the blessing, and therefore you want to know what happens. No. Well, I don't know who's getting the blessing. What did you say?
So maybe father will recognize, even though it wasn't.
Good. So this is suspense number one. Is this trick really going to work? Right? Maybe it's. And what's suspense number two? Suspense number two, I think, is a significant one. Is there enough time? Can he really get there before the other guy gets there? The guy has to eat a goat. She's making him 2 goats. I don't know why 2. And she's making him 2 goats. He has to sit there. He has to eat. She has to cook the food. Hey, she's cooking the food. Then she has to. She's cooking the food. They prepare the food for him. He goes in. He brings his father the food. He has to eat the food, and then he has to get into the mood to give the beracha, while not detecting that it's the wrong guy. That's A. And B, maybe what's going to happen in the interim? Esav will come back, right? It's like all this suspense that the Torah is building up, and like it's telling us, look, it happened by chance, right? So it's like it's putting into this story like things are falling into play. Okay, is the rest is it gonna work? So let's read the suspense. Okay, so I'm gonna skip 14. I'm gonna skip 14 to 17, right? So they make the necessary preparations. Okay, she even had time to make bread, which is wild. I don't know, unless it's pita bread. Okay, maybe it's not chali bread. Okay, fine. Okay, so verse 18. We go to verse 18. He went to his father and said, Father. And he said, Yes. Which one of my sons are you? Who are you? I don't know if he's which one of my sons, but who are you? Jacob said to his father, I am Esav, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Pray, sit up and eat of my game, that you may give me it in the most blessing. Okay. So he's going for it. He's doing it. He's playing up the deception. Isaac said to his son, how did you succeed so quickly, my son? Meaning he's already suspicious. Well, he has to go hunt and cook. I have no idea how long it takes you to hunt assumably, what's he hunting, by the way? What's Esav hunting?
Sounds like me.
Yeah, but what meat? Obviously, he's not hunting a sheep. How long does it take to get a sheep, right? What's Esav hunting? If he's going hunting, right? What's he? What?
Bear.
Not a bear. Probably like deer. Yeah. It's probably a deer. Yeah. So he didn't live in Oakhurst because otherwise it's very easy to find, right? Right. But that's probably what he's doing. Probably hunting like a deer or something. I have no idea how long it takes to count a deer. I never catch it. I never tried. Actually had a deer.
You run him over.
I had a deer give birth in my backyard. We had a baby
my
deer
God.
in the backyard. So, but never, don't know much about anything. Okay, so now what I don't know how long it's supposed to take him. Clearly, Yitzhak thinks it took him too fast. And this is after the cooking and after the dressing of the goat hairs. I mean, you have to kill the goat, take the hairs. This takes time, right? Okay.
But he did say come closer so I could.
Well, I didn't get to it. But I'm saying he's already suspicious. He's going to say it in a second. But I'm saying, already verse 20, we're playing up the suspense. He might get him, right? 21. I mean, he answers, and he said, because the Lord your God granted me good fortune. Right? It's a good answer. No, Hashem helped. How to work, Hashem? Okay. So he says, Isaac said to Jacob, come closer that I may feel you, my son. Whether you are really my son, I or not. Oh, he's not buying it. Well, let me feel. Oh, but wait, we already counted for this, right? So Jacob drew close to his father Isaac, who felt him and wondered. The voice is the voice of Jacob, yet the hands are the hands of Esav. Keep in mind, he's blind. If he's blind, he's not. He wasn't blind his whole life, but definitely you have a little bit of higher sensitivity to hearing. This is the other guy's voice, even though they're twins, so you could assume their voice sounded somewhat alike. But it says the voice is the voice of Yaakov. But the hands are like the hands of Esav. So confused. So what does he say? When they say voice here, it's probably not voice.
What is that?
The words, right? That's what the rabbis assume, because probably they have a similar voice to each other. They're twins. Makes sense. But rather, probably the words that he's saying. So he says, okay, maybe Esav is being nice. I don't know. The guy has the hair. I don't know. And then what are we wondering as he's touching him? Maybe what's going to happen when he's touching him? Maybe it's going to fall off. There's no crazy glue back then. I don't know how it stays on. I really have no idea how did it stay on. You know, what the reality of this is. Goat hairs really feel like human hairs. I don't know. I don't know what a goat hair is. I'm not interested in finding out what goat hair is. Right? All these fascinating questions that we have. What? Yeah.
You have to have it hanging around to put up the wall.
No, that one, thankfully, we don't have an okers. You don't know what exactly is happening here, okay? So he goes, he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esav, so he blessed him. The Torah says he's confused. Well, okay, blah. Now, what's the other suspense we said? Maybe the other guy's going to walk in and just put a stop to the whole thing. So he goes and he blesses him. He's giving him the blessing. It's very nice. And he said he drinks some wine. He gives him wine and things. A whole production that's happening here. And finally, he gives him the blessing. If you turn to page 30, verse 30 on page 54, right? Look what happens. No sooner had Jacob left the presence of his father Isaac, after Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, then his brother Esav came back from his hunt. Was there enough time? How much time was there enough time? Exactly enough time. He leaves, the other guy walks in.
Makes a great
The-
play.
What?
Makes a great play.
Yeah, right? Like the Torah is playing up the suspense factor. And we need to ask ourselves the question, why is the Torah obsessed with this whole suspense factor? It's weird. Seemingly, I could have cut it out of the story. You could have made it, Yitzhak told Rivka, Yitzhak, I don't know. Instead, you make this whole suspense factor. The Torah is giving Pisukim it's playing it up. Why does it want to play it up? What does it sound like? It almost sounds like, what is the Torah trying to convey? And maybe I'm jumping too much here. So if you don't like it, you don't need to accept it. That's fine. But what is almost the Torah trying to say?
Very conniving.
What?
The whole thing is very conniving.
No. But I'm talking about the way things fall into place. It almost could have gone wrong there.
Orchestrated.
Sounds like the closest we could get. Why am I putting it this way? We're not going to have God mentioned. God's not going to be mentioned. That God interfered in any which way. But what does it sound like? If God is interfering in any which way, it sounds like, oh, Yitzhak just happened to be blind. Rivka just happened to overhear. He got faked out by the goat hairs and it didn't fall off as he's touching him. The other guy didn't walk in. He walked in just after the other guy walked out. It almost sounds like, if you're the reader, does the Torah want you to? Who does the Torah want you to be rooting for? Right? It sounds like the Torah wants you to be rooting for Yaakov. This is the question: is the suspense? Is he going to make it? He makes it at the buzzer. Right? That's really what it sounds like. I don't know how else to say it. Right? The Torah is giving you these details that this all happened to be. Right? There's no coincidences. The suspense. Yaakov, is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? I made it. And I'm like, hey, right? Like all of a sudden we're supposed to cheer at Pasuk 30. Just from the way the story is written, even though it should bother us, right? But again, sometimes we talk about a character in a book, and I think this is important, right? The character in the book might not be doing the most kosher actions, but what does the author of the book want us? He wants you to root for this guy, right? So oftentimes that happens. You get introduced to a character. The author wants you to root for the person. He writes a story making you feel sympathetic to the person, yearning for the person's success, even though he's not the best of people, right? So before I even get to it, I'm not even dealing with this Torah view this as problematic or not yet, but I'm just saying it seems to be clear the Torah's sympathies lie with Yaakov in this thing. This from the suspense factor. I get that. If you don't love it, okay, I don't need you to be married to this one. I think we're gonna have better. But I'm just saying at this point in time, it does seem to be a central factor in the story. Okay. So Esav walks in. It's actually a very touching conversation here. He goes like this. Start from 31. He too prepared a dish and brought it to his father and said to his father, let my father sit up and eat of his son's game. so that you may give me your innermost blessing. Right? Okay, fine. Okay. It's very similar to what Yaakov said to his father. Okay, fine, very good. His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm your son, Esav, your firstborn." Isaac was seized with very violent trembling. Look at this. It's very interesting, fascinating. So he's trembling. What does that mean? I don't know. Who was it then, he demanded, that hunted game and brought it to me? Moreover, I ate of it before you came, and I blessed it. Now he must remain blessed. Wait, what? Weird. Okay. When Esav heard his father's words, he burst into wild and bitter sobbing and said to his father, "Bless me to his father." But he answered, "Your brother came with guile and took away your blessing." So Shelley's like, "No, I don't want you to translate the word guile. I want you to use the word deceit, right? That's the word mirma." So here's the problem. The word mirma in Hebrew, guile, which is, at least we'll put it this way, not negative connotations versus deceit, definitely negative connotations. Make a big difference. How does the Torah, what? Not necessarily. He used his guiles, used his knowledge in order to get something, in order to achieve something, right? I don't know if it has a negative connotation. Certainly not the sense of deceit, right? Guile, man, he used his wisdom. He was the wily fox, like almost, to shrewd, right? When we say shrewd is always negative, not necessarily. So now, but the question is, how does the Torah use the word? So here's the problem. The Torah only uses this word of mirma one other time, and it's the same type of story in which we don't know is did the people do something bad or not. When's the only other time they use the word mirma, this guile or deceit? When Yaakov's sons, in response to their sister being kidnapped by the people of the town of Shechem, they say, "Well, we'll let you marry if you all get circumcision." And then they're lying because they have no intent, and they go and they take dinah. Whether or not they needed to kill everybody, leave that aside for a second. But there, the story is a little bit that it says they answered the townspeople with guile, with mirma. Is it deceit there? Difficult to say, because the people, what they do, they kidnapped their sister, and then they said, they're having negotiations, "I want to marry your sister," but where's the sister? She's being held captive. It's not, you understand what happens? The guy goes, he sees Dinah, he rapes Dinah, he brings her to his city, into his palace, then he comes to Yaakov and says, "I want to marry your daughter." Oh yeah, very fun negotiation. We don't know. It definitely says Vayaneha, but it seems to be definitely he raped her. We don't know if she wants to marry the guy or not. But since when in the Torah does the Torah ever talk about does any female want to marry the male that they're being married off to, right? Keep that in mind. But does Leah want to marry Yaakov? It doesn't matter if she wants to marry Yaakov. We don't care, right? So keep that in mind. So now I have this thing. It seems to be clear that they're the mirma, and we could argue about should they have killed them after it has taken dinah, which I think is a significant thing, and I think that's what Yaakov gets angry about. He only gets angry at Shimon and Levi who killed. Notice all the brothers answer, but only two go to kill. Sounds like they were answering just to set it up so that they could take their sister, which would be, I think we would all agree, mirma, their guile would be smart, would be a positive sense, definitely not a negative sense. You're dealing with negotiations. These are not real negotiations. The person literally kidnapped your daughter, and then he's pretending he wants to enter fair negotiations of asking your daughter's hand in marriage. She's not there. She's in the guy's palace, right? I mean, let's be honest with what's happening here, right? So therefore, it seems to be the word mirma. I cannot use it to make a negative connotation from the story. It doesn't seem to be the Torah is weighing in morally by the usage of this word mirma.
Jacob punishes them.
He punishes the two sons who killed. But again, that's what I'm saying. No. So listen carefully what I said. The fact that all the brothers answered guile, and then only two brothers go and kill, whereas the other brothers go and take the sister. It's unclear that the brothers all knew what the other two brothers were doing. But if they did, why is Yaakov only angry at those two? What I'm telling you is the brothers answering in guile, and this is, I think, a proper reading of the story, is that they want to get their sister back. The fact that two of them decide to take vengeance upon the city is a completely different story. And even there, it's unclear who's correct, Yaakov or Shimon and Levi. Because if you look at the story, they get the final word. And then Yaakov is nervous that the townspeople are going to attack him. And there's fear of God upon the townspeople, and nobody attacks him. So almost as if God is weighing in on the positive to the side of Shimon and Levi. It's very interesting, right? So that's what I'm saying. Definitely, we can't bring support from the word of Mirma to say the Torah is criticizing Yaakov. If anything, it might even yield the opposite result, that the Torah Yitzhak is praising him. You know what? He did what he needed to do. It wasn't being offered, and he made sure to get it. Same way Dinah was being held captive, and they figured out a way out of the situation. So too here, they figured a way out of the situation. I don't want to say that, but I'm just saying, if you want to play up the word midma, I'd rather go there than the negative way, because I don't think it's substantiated within the biblical text. So keep that in mind. The only 2 times it appears in the Torah. So, well, I think for our purposes, I think what's fair to say, well, let's kind of place it aside for now. Okay, so look what he says in 36. Esav said, was he then named Jacob that he might supplant me these 2 times? First he took away my birthright, and now he's taken away my blessing. And he added, have you not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac answered, saying to Esav, but I made him master over you. I've given him all his brothers for servants, sustained him with grain and wine. What then can I do for you, my son? And Esav said to his father, have you but one blessing, father? Bless me too, father. And Esav laughed out loud, and his father Isaac answered him, saying, see, the abode shall be, your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth, and the dew of the heaven above, yet by the sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother, but when you grow restive, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Okay. So now, does Yitzhak say this blessing was given in error? I need to retract it? What was Yaakov nervous of? What did he tell his mother he was nervous of? Maybe my father will find out and he will curse me. And she says, don't worry, I got the curse. Does Yitzhak go and curse Yaakov when he finds out? No. Interesting. Yitzhak doesn't go and curse Yaakov. Is it because he says he resigns himself to the situation and says this was meant to be? That's one approach. Is it because he feels once you gave a blessing, you can't now curse? I don't know. But he doesn't say like the blessing is invalid, it was given in error. He doesn't go and curse him to try to compensate for the blessing. He doesn't do any of this stuff. He kind of leaves it alone. We'll come back to Yitzhak. So that's interesting. Yitzhak's statement, he seems to be not terrible. I mean, he seems to not be treating Yaakov as terrible. Look what happens in verse 41. Now Esav harbored a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which his father had given him. Weird. He doesn't say, what should the Torah say? Esav hated Yaakov, why? Because of the blessing he stole. No. His father had given him. As if the Torah, now keep in mind, this is key. It's talking about the feelings of Esav. It's telling us Esav hated him. You could be excused. You could argue. Imagine if the Torah wrote because the blessing Yaakov stole from Esav. No, the Torah doesn't want to go. It's not granting validity to the feelings of Esav. It says no, because of the blessing which his father had given him. His father gave. What? Right. No, this is not Esav talking, but this is Torah talking. It's explaining why Esav bore a grudge. So definitely Esav should. Okay, so now the Torah, it says bore grudge for the blessing. Now the Torah could say, what does the Torah feel about it? Blessing his father gave to him, like it was right. The Torah could have said very easily, if God doesn't like what Yaakov did, God could have written very easily, for the blessing that Yaakov stole from him, but the Torah doesn't do that, right? That's what I'm saying. So you see, Shelley, right? God is now having the ability to weigh in. Yeah, the blessing which his father had given him, as if it was just. His father gave it to him. Yitzhak chose to give it to Yaakov, and Esav's getting grumpy because this is what the Torah is. Yitzhak chose to give it to Yaakov, and now Esav is mad. He's angry because his father gave the blessing to his brother, not to him. What? The Torah, you know the story? What just happened? No, the Torah seems to be, yeah, it's okay, it's fine, right? Fascinating.
It was for him now, but it wasn't
Well, again, unclear if it's, that's why I'm going back to that thing. It could be he separated between the two. Again, I don't know, right? It's hard to say. Well, you could say, yeah, but even to answer your question, let's assume they are the same thing. It wasn't important then because it didn't mean anything in the immediate. It's only important when it means something in the immediate. So now, he's giving the beracha right now. It means something now, so then he cares. When it means something in 20 years, he doesn't care, right? That's the type of figure he is, instant gratification. Okay, so now, look what he says. He says, and Esav said to himself, let but the mourning period of my father come, and I will kill my brother Jacob. Okay, who's presented as a lack of morals person? Esav, who wants to commit murder for his brother, right? One of the terrible sins of the Torah, which we got introduced to by Cain and Hevel. Whoever is writing this clearly has very strong feelings about what's happening. We can't ignore this, right? And look at this. 42. When the words of the oldest son Esav reported to Rebekah, she sent for the son of Jacob and said to him, your brother Esav is consoling himself by complaining to kill you. Now, my son, listen to me. Flee at once to Hanan, to my brother Laban. Stay with him for a while, until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will fetch you from there. Let me not lose you both in one day. The mother is coming and saying, okay, go get out of here because so he doesn't kill you. Listen, my son, there's no, I mean, obviously, we wouldn't expect a tinge of anger from the mother who's initiated the plan, right? Okay, fine. But here's where it gets interesting. Rebekah said to Isaac, I am disgusted with my life because of the Hittite woman. If Jacob marries a Hittite woman like these from among the native women, what good will life be to me? Incomprehensible why they put a new chapter here. I don't know. That makes sense, right? But it's okay because it's not Jews didn't put the chapter here. Okay. Now look at the story. This is the conclusion to the story. This is what I think. So Isaac sent for Jacob, and what's the first interaction he has with Yaakov after the story? Isaac sent to Jacob and blessed him. I want to know he blessed. Okay, pretty significant. He instructed him, saying, you shall not take a wife from a Canaanite woman. Up, go to Padan-aram, to the house of Bethuel, your father's brothers, take a wife there from your mother's daughters of Lavan, your brother's mother. May El Shaddai bless you, make you fertile and numerous, so that come an assembly of people may grant you the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring, so that you may possess the land where you are sojourning, which God assigned to Abraham. And Isaac sent Jacob off, and went to Padan-aram, with Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, mother of Yaakov and Esav. So meaning, what happened here? What is the Torah just telling us here? He blesses him. It says the word blessing 3 times. He blessed him, right? He says in verse 1. In verse 3, may El Shaddai bless you. And then in verse 4, may he grant you the blessing of Abraham. And this is how the story concludes. Not only does Yaakov is not ever referred to as someone immoral, the father is so not upset that he gives him 3 blessings at the end. And look at the story. Rivka can't tell Yitzhak, oh, we need to send him away because Esav wants to kill him. She has to say because he needs to marry a wife. Why don't you say Esav wants to kill him? What's the problem? If we really think Yaakov did something wrong, so then of course Esav wanted to kill him. It's justified. Right? So obviously we better get him out of here so he doesn't die. And so no, she doesn't want to tell him that Esav is so terrible that he wants to kill his brother for no reason. I mean, so all of a sudden I read the story, and we reach the conclusion that it's clear. I think it's obvious that the author of the story has no interest in criticizing Yaakov whatsoever because of the story that happened. Indeed, the usage of the word midmah, that word is going to be used for Yaakov's benefit in Yaakov's lifetime for gaining back his daughter who's being held captive. I think it's a fascinating thing. Before we apply our own feelings, to take a step back, realize there's no way I know as much as a picture as the author of the story, who, by the way, also happens to be, the guy we call God. So that kind of helps too, right? And what's God's take on the story? No, not an ounce of criticism about Yaakov. Now, there are people to say, no, Yaakov is going to suffer deceit later on in his life. And therefore, it's a punishment for what happened to him. So we saw already, we mentioned the story of deceit being used in his benefit. Secondly, what's the other story of deceit that he had? The other story of deceit that Yaakov faced. Okay, well, I'll get there in a minute. Before that one, marrying Rachel. Is this a story that ends up positive for Yaakov or negative for Yaakov? Positive. It's how he has his 12 children, right? Meaning, at the end of the day, yeah, so we could look at it and say, oh, yeah, Yaakov suffered, but you can't, it's not the same. Here, Esav loses out on a berachah that he cannot get back. There, Yaakov ends up having 12 children, and because the original life of Rachel would have been barren, and now he's able to have multiple children who become the Shavatim. So it becomes odd, it becomes a difficult notion to say that. And the same thing was the story of Yosef. Yeah, Yaakov got deceived. He thought Yosef died. That's what the brothers told him. But it worked out for the benefit. The alternative was that they sell him, and he doesn't end up going down to Egypt. They end up rescuing Yosef and the whole story. So it's very hard to say from the story that Yaakov's life is a series of suffering because of what he did here. The Torah gives no indication whatsoever. Opposite. It faults Esav for being somebody who's a murderer. That's all it does, as opposed to anything else. And it shows you Yitzhak is blessing Yaakov. No terms of negativity. Throughout his life, he never goes through something that Esav goes through. So you have to sometimes let the story speak for itself. Does the story say Yaakov stole the blessings? Absolutely not. The story is perfectly fine with the blessings. The story sets up the tension. Is he going to make it? Yes. The story is actively rooting for Yaakov. To say otherwise is that's bizarre. You're imposing your own sense of justice of the story against the conclusion of justice of the author of the story. So what does this force us to do? Just like the previous story, understand the context a little bit better. I don't know the context fully. Try to attempt what details am I missing to understand, to know why this was the correct thing to do, why this was something that's not being criticized. That's where our questions lie, which are important questions that we don't have time to deal with. I'll take your questions in a second, but I'm saying, as opposed to the opposite way of saying, oh, Yaakov, he stole the berachot. It doesn't say that. It had the opportunity and it purposely will not say. Okay, Lily and then Shelley.
I just want to ask, does it ever show that perhaps Yaakov hinted to his wife that he wanted to give the blessing to Yaakov? Is there any situation where you get that the wife was really doing the husband's?
No, difficult. The way the Torah puts it, she shouldn't even know it was happening. It sounds so much he only because it happened to be that Esav, Rivka overheard Yitzhak telling Esav what he was planning. There's no indication that like they were in the conversation beforehand.
They often cite that Rebecca and her husband lack of communication, and that this would not have had to come out this way if they were.
Okay, so it's an interesting thing. We see that throughout the story. She gets a prophecy about her two children. It doesn't say she told Yitzhak.
Should she have?
Well, the commentators debate. Did she tell Yitzhak or not? Did Yitzhak know? Right? What were the motives of Yitzhak? Well, Yitzhak doesn't consult her about who to give the blessing to. Whereas, like Sarah tells Abraham, get rid of this guy Ishmael from the house, right? Which doesn't say his name. The son of the maidservant from the house, right? So different. You don't see them communicating. If Ka doesn't tell Yitzhak, no, you're making a mistake, let's change it. She does this whole thing. The only time they're actually communicating is at the end of the story. Right? So what does that mean? Can we say they don't love her? No, the Torah goes out of its way to say they love her. We have two affectionate acts of Yitzhak and Rivka together. They love each other. What's the concept of communication happening there? Why are they not communicating in regards to this? Good questions, but it's very dangerous to start playing marriage therapy based on small vignettes that you see without knowing the full picture of that. To keep in mind, the Torah is purposely telling a story and leaving out information that it doesn't find relevant. Do we actually know that maybe for 20 years they were having a discussion of who to get the berachah from, and maybe they didn't agree, and Yitzhak says, I'm doing my thing, and Rivka says, I'm not going to let you? I don't know what happened, right? The Torah is not interested. What is the Torah interested in telling us? What's the purpose of the story? Does Torah want us to focus on what's going on between Yaakov and Rivka? No, the Torah wants you to know one thing. What does it want you to know from the story? That the person who was supposed to get the beracha got the beracha. Right? The moral of the story is, I read the story, yes, Yaakov made it out was the beracha. We didn't let it get to that other guy. That's what we want you to know from the story.
Why couldn't they both get a similar beracha?
Beautiful question. Need to answer it, but not our focus today, right? Our focus here is, what does the Torah want us to walk away with? What is the Torah trying to convey? Answer, Torah wants to know the guy who's supposed to get the beracha got the beracha. It was close call, but we made sure he got it. And the significance of that, right? That's what the Torah would. There's a lot of questions in the story. Why can't they go to get a beracha? What context are we missing to understand why Yaakov is justified in taking the beracha? All these types of questions. But at the end of the day, for our purposes, the author wants us to know that the right guy got the beracha.
They're still fighting over it.
No. So we'll pause here for today. I think it's fun sometimes to actually look what the Torah wants us to say, and then we'll continue hopefully next week.
I have a question about Abraham.